Welcome to United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America on WSGW. Now, here is your host, Kareem Bowen.
Welcome to another edition of United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America. We are in the studio today, and I'm excited. The sun is out. It's 50 plus degrees in the Midwest, so that's a good day for this time of year. And we're just here getting ready to have a great conversation with you guys. I'm in the studio with Matthew. Matthew is in the studio once again. You remember he's a high school student that's doing an internship. And I got my guy John B in the place to be to my right, where the Mark Bassett guy usually sits.
Wait a minute.
In our social media stream. Mark is in our social media stream out there somewhere near Notre Dame's campus. So we're so glad. One day I'm going to see these guys. So glad to have. There we go, Matthew.
There we are. Here we go. Hey, now.
Yeah. Welcome to the conversation, Mark and Jonathan.
Jonathan, you did not ask for my permission to sit in my chair.
Oh, good news. It's not your chair.
Oh,
well, it's not the one. It's not the one when we have a guest in, you get a different chair. So
it's a different chair.
This is the guest chair.
It's a guest chair.
All right.
Shots are fired in the house, but we're so glad Geraldine Bowen Walker. Hey, if no one else can listen to you, at least you got your mom that'll pay attention.
Yeah.
She's in the stream.
We've got an audience of one.
No, the audience of one. She's in the stream first on today. But guys, hey, we're going to talk today a little bit about something. It's interesting, Mark. You sent me an article probably about a week or so ago, and I kind of was looking at it and reading through it and just taking a look at some other things. And I got an interesting phone call on yesterday, 2 days ago, which I thought was like, this is really, it keeps coming back. This is like the third time that this has slapped me in the face. We're going to talk about today the overlooked mental health struggles of boys in America. We're going to talk about that today. Now, unless you have been under a rock, there is so much that is happening around the world that we have to share and we want to talk about. So as we talk about what's hot off the press, I want to first of all give a shout out to Jalen Hurt. He has just signed a whopping contract for $255 million. The largest contract in NFL history so far. What do you guys think about those numbers?
Crazy, obviously, but it's a big industry. So
it's interesting because those kind of dollars, I mean, he's getting like a basketball player contract. I haven't seen those, normally basketball players get all the money. I guess, if you're a quarterback, you're one of the elite quarterback, you always get, the top dollar, but this is for real.
Yeah. I mean, the reality is he's had one great season, this past season, they made it into the playoffs and all, but they didn't win it. And I've never looked at the details of like a professional sports franchise, but I often wonder how they make those kind of numbers work. So,
well, I mean, they got 100 people on a squad out there running on it that are part of the bench, even if they don't get on. There's a lot of money in NFL football. These kind of dollars, Mark, make me want to go back and get back in the game. Put me in, coach.
Yeah.
But what is really cool about this, if you look at Jalen Hurts' team, which I really like, his agent, Nicole Lynn, is the first really NFL football agent that is really, I mean, she's blowing the spots up. She's working under Rich Paul. Rich Paul, do you guys know who Rich Paul is?
No.
Okay, Rich Paul is, when LeBron came into the league, he had 4 of his best friends that were also great athletes that didn't go to the league, and he put them in charge of his business, and they were called the Four Horsemen. And Rich Paul was one of those individuals. He got involved into sports management and marketing. Each of them have their own various aspects, and so he is now a sports agent, and dude is doing an amazing job. So he hires Nicole Lynn in, who now lands Jalen Hurt. And Jalen Hurt has a number of women that are a part of his team. So shout out to you, Jalen Hurt, for leaning in for women. But it's really a really unique story. On last 2 years ago, I had an opportunity to do a segment. I was working with Microsoft, and I was doing a segment, an interview for them for Women's History Month. And they had the first NBA or Major League Baseball agent, the first NFL referee, and all of those people. And it was really cool. But now to add Miss Nicole Lynn to that mix is really kind of cool. So I just thought we would give a shout out to that. Go ahead. And Jalen, if you need any ideas on how to spend that money, Mark and I are always available to give you some suggestions. But we're going, hey, what's going on? The new thing is Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida, versus Mickey Mouse. What's this deal with Mickey?
Well, again, I haven't paid a lot of attention to that either. I don't tend to pay attention to Ron DeSantis. I think, again, it's politics. I mean, I'm guessing it sounds like Disney's got had a bunch of incentives to support their business coming to Florida, probably, and he's trying to do away with it. And it's become, again, to me, it's just political theater. This is what this is really about.
It started with the woke culture, his attack, Florida is where woke comes to die. And he started, Disney pushed back on something that he was doing as it related to the LGBTQ plus community. I think I got all the letters and the symbols. And so they were pushing back, saying, hey, we're not going to do this. I know there's a whole thing with the transgender rights piece that was there. And, Disney, who employs a bazillion people in Florida, they're looking at who their workers are and their constituents. And, so they're looking out for their employees and the community at large. And so they pushed back. And so I don't know if you guys ever been to Disney in Florida?
One time.
What is wrong, Jonathan? Jonathan has never been to Disney.
I've been to, which one is it? Disneyland in California.
California.
The real one. That's the original. That's the real one. Disneyland. This Florida one's fake.
Oh, well, our Senator Kristen McDonald-Rivet said that she thinks that all kids should be able to go to Disneyland. So maybe she's going to make it possible for you. But when you go down to Disney, Disney is its own city, town.
It's huge. I mean, it is huge.
Absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. And so, they're taking away some of those tax breaks and incentives. And there's a huge swath of land that Disney had proposed some things to do over there. And they were like, I don't know what we're going to do with the land. We're going to take the land back. What should we do? There's a number. Maybe we'll put our own theme park over there, and then he ended with, or maybe a prison. Or maybe a prison.
That's like a horror place where Halloween time you can send the kids through, like a prison.
Genius. It's a scared straight and a Halloween attraction at the same time.
Yeah.
Hey kids, if you make it through this scared straight attraction, we're gonna send you to the amusement park. But it's just crazy, and I think it's absolutely just I don't know, but
it's just gotten preposterous. It's just like, don't you have something better to do as the governor of Florida than get into basically a pissing match with Disney over silly stuff? So,
well, that's one of the things. What were you gonna say, John?
Well, people on the right talk about virtue signaling all the time. It's virtue signaling. That's what it is. It's look at me. I'm the most MAGA of them all.
Yeah,
and I think that's what it is. So now, what does he do now that Trump is out there trying to get other senators and folks on his team? He's got to declare or walk away. I think that he's got to let people know exactly what he's doing. I think the stops he's been making have been signaling that, but I think he just needs to declare and let them fight.
He's in Midland, so.
Yeah. You know what I think would be? Can you imagine a showdown between number 45 and DeSantis?
It would be really, I don't know. To me, it's just sad where the state of politics has gone since.
It would be entertainment. I promise.
6 years.
Anyways, we're moving on. All right, I got to ask you guys: is it an insane gun culture, or is it the culture of insanity that we're working with here? And I'm just gonna throw a couple of things, and we'll talk about each of them. But we've had a shooting at a this is just all in the past week. A shooting at a Sweet 16 birthday party. 2 suspects have been apprehended. 4 counts of reckless murder. And 4 individuals were murdered. 40 individuals now they're saying have been injured.
Was that a fight that escalated, Kareem? Well,
yeah, there was a disagreement. According to the pastor, the good pastor, there was a pastor that was there, and he said that there was an argument that ensued. He talked to them. They separated. The one couple left, and they came back, and this is what we got.
Yep.
So then we have a 16-year-old black boy who is shot. Y'all asked me about Kansas City, Missouri, and Alabama and Mississippi. Anyways, a 60-year-old kid is shot by an 84-year-old man for ringing the wrong doorbell. Then we've got a 20-year-old girl who's murdered for pulling into the wrong driveway in upstate New York. Then we've got a 26-year-old guy who goes ham on a car full of cheerleaders in Texas because one of the girls accidentally got into the wrong car. He gets out of the passenger side and then opens fire on the car. Is it just an insane gun culture, or is this a culture of insanity? Are we all just crazy? How long before,
I guess for me, it's the latter. And a gun certainly enables violence and does a lot more damage than your hands. But to get into the position of where like you're pulling a gun on somebody and shooting at them is an issue with your psychology that you think that's okay. And now the gun makes the consequence of that way more severe than if, he just gets out and starts hitting on her with his bare hands. But to me, it's a mental issue that you get to that place so easily, so quickly, and you don't have the ability to restrain yourself.
What are you thinking, Jonathan?
Well, I was kind of in a similar position where these are all people who there's something wrong if you're pulling a gun because someone pulled up your driveway. But thinking about that and thinking like when you sent me the run of show, I'm like, okay, how many stabbings are in London over the course of a year? And it's like 11,000 in 2022 or something like that, 2021 or 2022. Mm-hmm. But how do you think a gun is so much less personal that it kind of separates the person from the consequence of their action? At least in the moment, they think like, would you find it easier to stab someone or shoot someone? Well, if you're angry, it's kind of one of those, one is more accessible. Well, not more accessible in that way, but more.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
But the reality is it's far easier to kill someone in a moment of passion, and a lot of it's emotional, of extreme emotion. It's far easier to kill someone with a gun than it is a knife, to be honest with you. Because a knife, you have to hit very specific spots in the body to actually kill someone quickly with a knife. Whereas a gun does so much damage with a single bullet, especially depending on the type of gun you've got, that it just takes one round almost anywhere in the torso, and you've got a pretty good chance of killing somebody.
Well, based upon the headlines, it sounds like the only people who have guns are crazy people. I mean,
the only people
that's just not the statistics. The reality is all it takes is one crazy person a day to do something with a gun, and it's in the news and you read about it.
Okay, so there is a culture of insanity. I think that we are suffering from this idea of, and I said this coming out of 2020, we are not okay. I don't believe as Americans we are okay. I think everyone is jumping to this idea that we're going to get back together. And we're going to talk about this more when we start talking about the impact on young men. But I don't think that we're okay. I think that there's still some things that we got to still deal with. And we need to sit down and talk to somebody. Come on, where's Big Mama? Bring her in the room.
An argument could be made as well that these are 4 examples from the past week that we are inundated with every single day. And I think that that's kind of helping to ratchet up the fear, help ratchet up the tension, and make these things, I would argue, more common.
A lot of the details on these other cases have not come out. So as it relates to the upstate New York, the gun owner was in the house. The people pulled into the driveway. I'm assuming it's a long driveway. And their response, and this kind of threw me off, the police response was like, this is out in the country. This is rural upstate New York. And I'm thinking to myself, what the heck does that have to do with the people in the country are insane? So Jonathan, you're out there in the country, you're insane. But it just didn't make sense to me that they would do this, and then the girls have to drive to get cell service to be even able to call 911. And when is that okay? Someone pulls into your driveway, you're in the home, not being
that's your first response is to get out a gun and start shooting them. Yeah, I mean that's just, again, it's crazy.
Where they do that at?
Yeah,
it's illegal. Well, that's the bottom line, isn't it? It's immoral and illegal,
It's
and that person was wrong to do it. Okay.
Yes, Cherie Steele Phillips, rage for minor infractions such as wrong driveway is definitely mental health issues. Stevie, everyone is not responsible enough to carry a gun. That's so very true. And use it properly. That also makes me ask, why do we need so many guns, and what is proper use of them? You know, when you go through a gun safety class, and not everyone has to do it, only when you want to carry concealed carry. Gun safety is what you're talking about, you know, where you can carry, how you can carry, you know, when you're carrying in certain conditions. If you have a drink of alcohol, you got to separate the ammunition from the gun itself. One goes into the glove compartment lock, the other goes into the trunk. There's a whole safety aspect of how they do this that they train. The problem becomes when you have a lot of people, because you can go get a license or a permit to, get a gun if you're a homeowner, but you get this stuff, you go out there and people are not getting that proper training. I think that's one of the issues, because people are getting caught and they're getting felonies for carry. Oh, I didn't know I couldn't carry. Well, if you would have taken a class, you would know that you can't take your gun there. It's off limits. But I think that there is this underlying thing that Americans are not well. And this may have been the case before. And like so many other things, COVID exploited the fact that our mental health institutions and what we did to them and gutting them out really need to be re-examined in how we handle issues of people who aren't well. So we'll see what happens. Okay, but I got to go back. So the 16-year-old boy, this is crazy, in Kansas City, Missouri. He gets shot by the 84-year-old man for ringing the doorbell. And the 84-year-old man, and I think his age has a lot to do with this as well. He says, I was afraid. I was in my bed laying down. I came out. I saw a big black figure. It scared me. So he shoots through the door to kill the individual. He said that, I thought the person was trying to get in. So he shoots through the door, shoots the kid in the shoulder or in the arm, and then shoots him in the head. And then what happens after this is also alarming to me, because the 16-year-old kid, who's not like 6'9", 6'8", he's I think he's like 5'9", 5'10", nothing menacing, skinny little kid. He goes to 3 other homes before anyone's even able to help him. Is this a racial situation? The prosecutors and everyone says they see that there is a race component. I'm interested in knowing what your thoughts are, guys.
Again, as Jonathan likes to say, we're assuming things and we're putting motive in it. But most likely, again, I don't know what kind of neighborhood this was, and I do think age has a certain concept. If this is a largely white neighborhood where you see very few black people, and all of a sudden, I don't know what time of day this is. Someone knocks on your door, and I mean, it's crazy again that would be a response, but it probably has something to do with it. And then I think, again, people knocking on your door. I mean, we've had all sorts of cases in the past. I remember being told as a kid, don't open the door for someone that you don't know, and so here's again a guy now if he's bleeding and everything, I would have hoped they would have said, okay, I'm going to call the police, wait there, sit there, if they were afraid to open the door, because there are scams where people act hurt and they knock on a door and they break in and they steal stuff. So,
absolutely.
And so, but I would have thought that someone would have said, okay, this looks real, but I don't know, but let me call the police, we'll get you help.
At least do that, right?
Right.
Yeah. Matthew, what do you want to say?
Well, see, I don't know all the information on what happened either. So, like I was kind of agreeing with him. You don't really know what neighborhood it came from. You don't know if this individual had like previous experience of people trying to break into his home. Like there's a lot of different like key pieces you have to look at, and to automatically think just because he's an African American, like I don't know, you like I said, you'd have to wait and see and all the information gets there because like if he was white, black, Mexican, Asian, if someone gets shot, like going to your door and you shoot someone for no reason, I like that's not someone coming to your door. That's not no matter what the race, you don't just shoot them. So like, yeah, it's like mental problems, stuff like that. But just to sit there and say it's because it's black, like he's African American, I don't really know. I think you would have to wait until all the information's out to really like decide that.
All right. Well, I thank you for your comment, Matt, as well. And I think that this is a very difference in understanding. I made the comment a couple of weeks ago. I think it was like Missouri doesn't exist to me. Like I'm not going to Missouri. I'm not going to Mississippi. I ain't going to Alabama. And I told you because there is a pervasive culture that yet exists with in many areas, and younger people are a lot different. And as a matter of fact, it was the younger people in the community that really pushed and took a walk. It was black, whites, and other. You know what I mean? But I think that this is where white America doesn't. They're unaware of how many people in society still feel as they did in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and whatever. But as a black man, we recognize these things. And I'll say it because of this. One, in terms, I just saw a big black man. The kid is not a big black man. I think that blackness scares a number of people from certain generations. I think people have a fear of black skin. And it's kind of like, what Trump said about the folks who are coming across the borders. They're illegals, they're carriers, they're gun killers, they're rapists and murderers and drug dealers. And it creates this feeling of fear, xenophobia in that sense, but this racial fear that exists. And I think that people walk around with it even if they don't consider themselves racist. It is a bias of, oh my gosh, there's a black man at my door. The fact that he said that, I saw this big black figure was just kind of interesting to me. Not just like, I saw someone at my door and I was scared and I was afraid. But I think that it speaks to his fears and as a man of a certain generation. It's unfortunate that this happens. I think that he is an older man. I think that makes a difference. But unfortunately, you an old dude, but you got to go to jail, bro. You have shot someone, attempted murder, and so I think you got to go to jail. But this is another example, and like I said, I'm not gonna. I think personally, from my perspective, this is an issue that is a racial issue. But that's just how I think that we see things that can be very differently. We always want to wait to the facts. Number 3 on this list that we're going to talk about, and we got a minute here, so I'm going to lead into this, and we're going to finish this on the other side of that conversation. But I just want to lay out what we're going to talk about really quickly. In Antioch, California, just outside of San Francisco, it's near the Black Hawk area. There is a situation where 40% of the police staff, good intending officers, just a few bad apples, were caught in a text stream that came from an investigation on how they were treating one particular individual who was a part of what I would consider, I think it was a shooting or something of that nature. And so upon a further investigation by the defense attorney, there was a lot that came out. Racist conversations, text, tweets, pictures, the whole nine. We're going to talk about it when we come back from this break. Stay, don't go away. We'll be back with more United Shades of Gray.
You're listening to United Shades of Gray on WSGW.
This is Kareem. We're back with more United Shades of Gray, conversations of race in America. Before we took our quick little break, we were talking. I set up the conversation about what's taking place outside of San Francisco in a town called Antioch, which I know very well. When I was out in the Bay Area, I was out there probably for about 7 years, and lived in Black Hawk. Spent a great deal of time passing through Antioch and other areas. Very affluent areas in certain areas of the county. But it's interesting. Contra Costa County, I think it's what it's called. So there's an interesting situation here. Terrion Pugh was arrested about 2 years ago, and his attorney, which is was it Caramango, whatever is the Carrera-Magno. It sounds like an Italian name. He pushed for an investigation after his client was arrested and mistreated. And so there's been an ongoing investigation, and that investigation has now come to find out in a community where the Black population is about 20%, which is big, more than in most areas. 40% of the Antioch police force is likely involved in these racist tweets that have been surrounding, and they went back to 2020. So that encapsulates some of the things that took place with George Floyd. And when I say 40%, I'm talking about 99 officers that are involved in this. And the types of things that were being said is, oh, there's so many blacks, it's sick. They all look the same. I feel like I'm at a zoo. I hate these idiots. We managed to set up a perimeter and got his whipped in the backyard, and I field goal kicked his head. Just ridiculous. And so when we have these types of things that are taking place, for me and for other folks from communities of color, we're like, remember, y'all keep talking about these officers are so great. And I know this is not every officer on the planet. Let me say that before anyone has an opportunity to think it. I get that. But I think that just as old man shooting man on porch, there are these underlying thoughts and feelings that don't come out in a public forum. They're not spoken with. The mayor happens to be a black mayor. He's also included in some of these conversations. But I think that there is a pervasive mentality that exists in many folk who they won't share this. You won't talk about it in public. You won't act it out. You'll be a model citizen. But when we think that we are undercover, I think that these conversations happen, and these conversations have to be tied to emotions. And I think this is a great example of what many folks who come from inner cities say, that the police are corrupt. And this is the other side. And so normally it's one or two individuals. Here we got 40%, almost half the police force that is engaging in this behavior. So I wanted to bring that just to get some thought or some insight. Is this another few bad apples, and all those bad apples just happen to be all in one bunch? Or what's the deal going on here in Antioch?
Well, clearly it's hard for me to believe that there's 40%. I mean, obviously it's true that 40% of a police force is involved in tweets or texts or whatever they're talking about. Clearly it's pervasive and it's cultural. So everybody, had to have known. And it's just hard for me to comprehend that you see something like that and you don't say something to the authorities, and that the authorities wouldn't, like the chief of police doesn't step in and go, okay, we got to do something here. It's just it's hard to fathom, frankly. I'm almost speechless.
Yeah. I mean, I
don't know how people have that kind of mentality, or like they're excited about kicking somebody in the head. I mean, I don't understand that.
It's crazy to me. But what is true, and this is one of the things that I say all the time, and y'all know my DNA and where I come from, what I feel, and I don't. I was gonna say I don't hold any biases against anybody, and that's not necessarily true because we all have biases. None that I think that I would be responding in this shape or form. But I do feel that there is. I think those who have been freed from this mentality in our country struggle, like you're saying, Mark, to think that these types of thoughts and ideas and actions yet exist. And I think that they exist quite often in many circles, but they are not, until something like this happens, we don't see them. Stacy Crosby says some people are unaware of some people choose not to educate themselves on things that don't affect them. I lived in North Carolina and Georgia for many years. I knew certain cities, towns not to drive through. This is real. After dark, being a Black woman, I also knew only passing through that day, not only from what I learned, but even some white people advised me not to go there. And when you go to the South, I've had that said to, they're like, well, you want to make sure you don't go through there at nighttime. They understand it. But those of us, when we get to other areas, we just don't think that these things yet exist. That was just something I wanted to bring up. Mark, once again, because we're going to get to our conversation, we're going to leave some time to talk about mental health issues. The Breaking Bread conversations coming up with Aaron Patrice of the Breaking Bread Village, Saturday, April 29th at 6 p.m. We want you guys to tune in, get involved with that conversation as it happens. All right. So, Mark, you sent me this article that we were reading from the Washington Post. And I was reading the article, and I think this was on April 14th, is what I put down here. And they were talking about how we were missing major mental health crises with teen boys and how they are struggling. It was an article that was written by Jennifer Fink. And it was interesting because a few days later, I got a call from a young lady by the name of Kenya Ruth. And she's on the board of directors. She's actually the chair for Detroit Wayne Mental Health Authority on this very topic. And I told her, hey, you know what, my partner in crime sent me this, and she was just talking about the issues that they're finding and how much pushback that there is to hone in and to focus and to really do more studies on how young boys are being impacted because of this current mental health crisis that's going on. Mark, this is a space where you were very, I think, heroic in sharing your personal struggles with mental health. Do you think that this is really something that we need to investigate more, and that this is a bigger problem than we're really giving sight to?
Yes. I mean, the answer to all those things is yes. I mean, I think mental health, again, I think there's a stigma with that, although I think, with time it's going away. As you've pointed out, in certain communities, like your community, the Black community, it's really a stigma. It's not something you typically do. I think, and again, specifically for boys or men, there is an expectation that you're stronger mentally and that you don't express emotions and, compartmentalizing things and not dealing with feelings or emotions or experiences ultimately never leads to a good thing. You can only bottle it up or hide it for so long, and then it tends to lead to negative consequences.
One of the things I thought was really interesting about the article that you sent is this Arizona mother. This Arizona mother said that she thought she knew the signs of depression, and so she, what we've always said and what we've talked about, feelings of hopelessness, sadness, anxiety, and she thought she was doing well until her son had committed suicide. And the thing that was really the pervasive or the most noticeable thing that she was looking at was that her son began lashing out at her. And she just assumed that he was mad, you mad at me for something your daddy did or whatever. And she took it personally. But now they're understanding or thinking that that is an additional sign of depression, that one might lash out at other people. If that's the case, I might have a whole bunch of depressed folks around. But what do you think about the changing dynamics or the symptoms of depression?
Well, again, I think it's, like you said, it's there's all these telltale things, but just because someone's exhibiting one or two of them doesn't necessarily mean it's depression. I mean, it's one of those things. Again, I think I've explained it talked about it before, where I had a guy that I worked with who was literally in a month shot himself in the head, and it's I don't know anyone saw that coming when it's all said and done, and it's just something. I think it's better to ask and engage and rather be safe than sorry when you're dealing with people. And if they're your kid, really encourage them to try to get help because even if they're lashing out, like I had a daughter lashed out, there's something there, whether it's depression or anger that she needs to deal with. She was lashing out constantly with her mother, and we ultimately talked her into getting some counseling because she had issues with her mom, and those are all things that you need to get help with.
Well, I know that we're going to get Miss Ruth in here because I think that, as Detroit goes, so does the state. And her board meeting was actually taking place during the time that we were recording this time, but she's definitely going to come in. I want to ask these two younger guys, Jonathan and Matthew, how do you guys talk about depression? Do you talk about depression with your friend circles, your fan? I mean, what's the situation? Is it something off limits, or does it just not come up?
Well, I'd have to say, one, it doesn't usually come up, and then for guys especially, number two, if it does come up, it's always in a joking matter. So like if someone mentions something that they're feeling down, we kind of take it more as a joke and treat it more as a joke than we do as, oh, he's going through something, we need to be here for him. Let's say like if I told one of my friends that I was feeling down, or they told me that they were feeling down, like we'd come up with a joke or be like, haha, well, nobody likes you anyway, or something like that. You know what friends
Right.
do. But yeah, we never really talk, like sit down and be like, hey man, I've been going through this and I've been feeling like this lately, and like I don't really know how to express it. No, like every time depression's really brought up, it's always in a joking matter.
Wow. What about you, Jonathan?
I think you can kind of figure out when someone's going through something, but when Matthew was just talking there, it made me think of something. Of course, you don't want to show weakness, because any sign of weakness is going to be jumped on and ridiculed by your friend group if you're a guy. And it's kind of how we communicate. It's, oh, I can't lift. Oh, noodle arms, But I think having a problem and being the person, like if I've been friends with somebody and I've reached out to them privately and said, hey, I've noticed a few things. Are you okay? I think that reaching out could be seen as a sign of weakness. And I think that that's kind of part of the problem, is we're afraid to reach out and try and help each other when we think something might be off.
I had a friend growing up, one of my high school friends, his name was Scott Keller. And he was always the jokester, always making jokes and cracking up and laughing and things. And shortly after we graduated high school, he committed suicide. He shot himself in the head. And then I had another friend who was a very close friend, lived next door to my aunt. We would see him all the time. And he, Rob Renix, he put, turned on his car in the garage and put the hose in from the tailpipe into the car and committed suicide. These are two individuals, based upon us just being boys, that we could not fathom that these individuals would want to kill themselves, because they were always joking and having fun and the life of the party. So I think that there are some conversations, and one of the things, now this is where, Rob, I think the concept of not Rob, I'm saying Mike, Mark, excuse me. This is where the concept of toxic, I'm going to get you sooner or later. The concept of toxic masculinity does not serve us well, because as you said, Jonathan, if we show any signs of weakness, it's not, we're punks, or we're sissies, or, those, we can't be even concerned about too much about our friends, because why are you so concerned? Oh, are you concerned?
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
And so what are we doing, Mark? I mean, as a person who has helped to contribute to this level of toxicity, and it's really, honestly, it's generations of us telling our young boys, stop crying, you're not a wussy, stop crying. How do we deal with this? And Mark, how do you deal with these things with your kids, because you do have boys?
I do, and I think it's an evolution. I mean, ultimately, you have to change. I mean, I need to be an example for my sons and for people around me, and so as I've grown and matured and tried to grow myself, I've been much more open to encouraging my kids to seek help if I feel like they need help, talking about it, being really open about it, showing emotion, showing vulnerability. I mean, I've talked to you as a CEO, I've actually shown vulnerability and emotion in front of the entire organization. And a lot of times, to Jonathan's point, that can be scary and people might make fun of it, but it's amazing how many people react very positively to that, because it actually is the sign of the ultimate strength to show your vulnerability in public. Now, young men may not be mature enough to kind of appreciate that at the time, but maybe at least outwardly, but maybe inwardly they do. I don't know. But I think it starts with all of us setting an example and encouraging, engaging those that we think are struggling, speaking with them, asking them how they're doing, and encouraging them to seek help if we think that's the right thing to do.
Okay. Cherie Steele Phillips says it's unfortunate that sometimes it's right under your nose in the home. Teachers, counselors, nurses, doctors, and classmates cannot spot it before those in the same home.
I 100% agree with Cherise. 100%. It's never easy to spot it in your own family. It's much harder to spot in your own family at times.
Yeah, and Mark, and this is completely not on subject, but I just want just to tell Mary hello. I thought she was getting dressed or something on the right side. Just let her know that she's kind of entering into the camera every now and then. How's it go, Mary? How do you deal with your kids? You are a woman. This is a whole testosterone crew here. But as a mom, how do you deal with your young boys in terms of telling when they were younger? They're older now. In terms of dealing with emotional things, their internal parts and the workings of how they're feeling. How did you work through that process?
That depends. There's 7 different kids, and that's different decades. So it depends. First one, tell them stop thinking that. Last one, sit there and listen to him whine. I'm sorry, I did not do a good job. Mark's the one who noticed the one who had really serious issues going on. I didn't even notice it. I was just too hardcore working on getting stuff done.
So Mark, what were the indications?
What?
What were some of the indicators?
Of the one who's having trouble?
Yeah.
Well, just in general, yeah.
Well, at first it seemed like a really nice thing. That kid was staying very quiet in his room all the time, not bothering anybody, not doing anything. But then we find out later, he's just watching video after video after video. And then Mark talks to him like, well, what are you passionate about? He's nothing. And it turns out, he actually can't fall asleep at night. And then he's asleep during the day. And so Mark figured it out.
Yeah, I mean, there's different signs. I think withdrawal is a big one. Now, high school boys don't like to interact with their parents, but I think you can kind of tell when they just don't want to be around you, but they got their other things going versus like they're totally isolating themselves. You can kind of tell that. I think, again, to this other woman's point, irritability. Again, it's not uncommon for moms and daughters to butt heads. It's not uncommon for sons and fathers to butt heads. But I think you can sense when there's something like another level to it. I think you can sense those things at times. So it's really being aware, I think. It's being aware and paying attention and kind of listening.
What was the name of the psychologist or the psych doctor that was here from Second Life? Do you guys remember?
Dr. Pashik.
Dr. Pashik. We got to bring Dr. Pashik in to talk about this, because I think that this is a really interesting space, because I think that, we, even with COVID, if we were to look at COVID, remember how these are the signs of COVID. If you're feeling upper respiratory issues, if you're coughing, and these were the signs of COVID, right? And then it's like, oh, nope, the signs of COVID now are, someone's sleeping too long, or this is so. These things are so different. And I would imagine, I would wonder if even regionally they would be different. Like if the signs in a New York City, a big city, New York, Chicago, would be different than a sign for someone who's from Podunk, Michigan. Standish, Michigan, or Auburn. If they have differences based upon where people are, and are really tied to more how people are socializing with one another. I don't know. I'm not a therapist, but I think we're going to get them in to have that conversation because I think it's important. Jonathan, have you ever had an experience where you had to talk one of your friends off the ledge?
No. Thankfully. Like I'm very thankful for that. There have been friends who I knew were struggling, and this was in high school. There have been friends that I knew were struggling, but I kind of ignored it because that's what you do when you're a guy in high school and your friend's being a wuss in your point of view. I learned from that experience, and there have been friends that I've talked through some very difficult times. And it's one of those, there's an immense amount of trust that needs to be had in that relationship before that kind of thing can happen.
Have either of you guys been impacted by suicide in your friend groups at all?
Not directly.
Not directly, yeah. It's a different kind of thing.
I still think about that guy, and I won't say his name, that committed suicide. To this day, I think about him frequently, and just what a tragedy it was because he was such a talented man.
And I wonder these things, Mark, because I've tried to be more aware, but the reality of a situation, and I think this is where guys are okay. I've experienced, about 3 or 4 individuals who are in my close friend circles who have committed suicide. And I didn't realize it, but just being male is a major factor. Factor of suicide. I didn't know that.
Men are way more probable to commit suicide than women, way more. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's significantly higher.
Well, they said that there's been a massive increase over the past 3 or 4 years, that it's up by 8%, an 8% increase of this. But one of the things, so the idea was I'm going to be a bit more aware. I'm going to be paying attention to friends. But then when people are calling you and they're complaining about stuff, I mean, I think the natural thing is like, maybe you'll take one phone call, but like 2, 3, then you're looking at the phone and like, I don't have time for this. All they're going to do is sit here and complain. And we really don't know where a person is in these moments. And so we really have to sometimes push ourselves beyond ourselves for the help and the benefit of other people that are around us.
I tend to think you can tell. Again, nothing's ever failed safe or foolproof, but the difference between a complainer and someone who's really struggling. Some people just like to whine about everything, and I just think that, and I wouldn't be able to tell you like, well, here's the difference and here's how you can spot it. For me, it's like I can kind of feel the difference between the two.
One's superficial, the other one you can kind of see. Oh, this.
Do you guys really think that?
Yeah, I really do.
Okay. So some people just like to complain, and you got to know the difference between.
I like to complain. I'm doing all right.
Between people who like to complain and people who have serious issues. Well, the story or the article that we're talking about was just sharing how the focus has been on teen girls, and we understand that, especially with this whole thing about body shaming and being insecure with the things that you're dealing with. But they're saying teen boys are experiencing high levels of mental distress, massive increase. I said between 15 and 24-year-olds, 8% increase. Lack of research. We got to do more. And then the ideas that we were talking about, these issues of toxic masculinity, telling young boys that they shouldn't cry or be men. Mark, anything you would like to say in these last couple of minutes? We got 20 seconds. What you got?
No, just if you suspect someone's got issues, it's better to really encourage them to seek help versus not seek help.
Yeah, and so we'll get some information out there for coping with stress, hype hotlines. We'll put them on the social media page, even because trauma is real and we're experiencing it in a very real time. Let's get involved. Let's have conversations with our young boys. Let them know that they're important, they're encouraged, and it's very important that we get involved. Promiscuity in teen boys is a sign of depression as well. Thank you, Sharice Del Phillips. God bless you all. Grace and peace.